and welcome. I'm Melinda Kiwami. Tonight, federal government vows to stop further attacks on innocent Nigerians by suspected herdsmen, to establish cattle settlements as part of measures to end clashes with farmers. Governor Samuel Ortom calls for the arrest of Mietiala leaders as women protest continued killings in Benue communities. Human traffickers to face prosecution as federal government vows to go tough on them. And the United States to cancel permits allowing people from El Salvador to live and work in the country.
On Business News tonight, Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves hit $40.4 billion as central bank injects fresh $210 million into the interbank market.
On sports news, FC Barcelona new record signing Philippe Coutinho says joining the club was an easy decision for him.
And from Abuja, primary school teachers in Kaduna State began an indefinite strike to protest the sack of over 20,000 of their colleagues by the government.
We begin tonight with the vow by the federal government to reject further attacks by herdsmen in the country, especially in Nigeria's north-central states. This follows the national outrage that trailed the invasion of communities in Logo and Guma local government areas of Benue State by suspected herdsmen. During a meeting with governors from Kaduna, Niger, Benue, Taraba and Adamawa states in Abuja, the Minister of Interior, Abdulrahman Dambazao, mentioned that the President remains committed to ensuring peace in the country, while the Minister of Agriculture, Audogbe, who was also at that meeting, talked about the plans by government to establish cattle settlements.
Threats to peace and public safety in any form and at any location could not be tolerated. It is the responsibility of the government at all levels to provide unconditionally sustainable peace, security, and public safety within its territorial boundaries. Against this background, the meeting is convened to primarily bring us together to share our experiences on the aforementioned security challenges. The meeting will then agree on necessary measures to be taken and apportion responsibilities. Between the Minister of Interior and ourselves, we have already put together a program called Agro Rangers, the training of whom the Ministry of Interior will undertake, and their job is to protect agricultural investments wherever they exist. We have had 1 or 2 delays, but before long, these trainees will begin to come out and carry out the duty of enforcing and securing agricultural investments.
Still on the attack in Benue State, police authorities are insisting that they are on the trail of the perpetrators, but rely on information from residents to track them down. The Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of operations, Habila Josak, explains that his men are working with security officers in Nasarawa and Taraba states to prevent further attacks, while a retired Army Colonel, Tony Nyam, wants the President to take a tougher stance to end the violence. They were guests on our breakfast program, Sunrise Daily.
We intend to collaborate with the community. It must be a community-based policing, because you need to have information from the communities on their observation and on any threat that they've been able to pick. Because you know that this general area are agrarian, they are farmers, and so they sparsely live, and they live a distance from one another because they would want to have in cultivating their general area within the houses. And so we are deploying to these areas that we are suspecting based on our interaction with the communities where the roots of this cattle so that we will be able to intercept early and also to respond quickly.
First of all, there's a failure both at the policy and operational level. First, at the policy level, I would have thought that the National Security Advisor would have advised the president that you cannot use police action against sophisticated armed invaders of one's community. 2, there are double standards we see here evidently. Today, the cautious guy in Rivers has been killed by the military because the military were sent in. Why would President Buhari send police to Benue? Why not the military? When it was the case of militants, soldiers were sent in. When it was the case of IPOP, soldiers were sent in. In the case of armed, sophisticatedly armed invaders, many, as said by a program by the governor of Kano State, are foreigners. You send police. That is pure double standard.
Still on security matters, but this time in Adamawa State, where civil society groups have been discussing how best to consolidate on the peace that has returned to war-torn communities in the state following deadly attacks by Boko Haram insurgents. Participants at the meeting also discussed the success and full implementation of Operation Safe Corridor established to reintegrate repentant Boko Haram members into society.
It used to be a place of fire and fury when the insurgents held sway, until respite came through the boots and superior air power of the Nigerian military. Relative peace has returned, families reunited, and complete integration on the way, but there seemed to be a new challenge to deal with. Community members in affected war areas in Adamawa are having a hard time accepting repentant former Boko Haram members or maidens who were married by the insurgents. This dialogue of civil society groups, members of faith-based community, government officials, NGOs and more is an attempt to deal with that problem.
These members of Boko Haram are from these communities and they'll continue to belong to that community. They have relations, they have families, so the reconciliation is very important. It has been done in some society in Rwanda, in Uganda, in South Africa to successful, so I think we need to pursue reconciliation.
The lingering conflict between farmers and herders, what happened in Numan recently, is an issue that needs very serious proactive steps to address.
The rep of the state governor has a slightly different approach and thinking.
This calamity that befell us do not represent an opportunity for some of us to figure our nests. In some other places, in some other climes, this unfortunate incident is also being used by some people to enrich themselves, to shortchange the system, to cheat the system, and to make the system look very, very dirty. For us in Adamawa, we are committed to making it very clean, we are committed to being accountable, we are committed to doing what is right, and we will continue to do it. And at any point in time, our office is open. Give me any suggestion. If it works, I'll present it to the Executive Council and I'll follow your activities.
Where IDP camps have been set up, accountability issues have been recorded, but the direction from this meeting is clear. Justice, accountability, trauma management, peace and reconciliation will form the template for the total restoration of communities and its citizens who were disintegrated by the war that occurred in those places.
Let's go back to Benue State now, where the killings appear to be far from over, as Governor Samuel Ortom is calling for the arrest of the leader of the Miyetti Allah over insightful comments. This call comes in the wake of recent attacks that left scores of people dead, with hundreds fleeing. Our correspondent, Oreoluwa Shonibare, has more.
The move that gave many hope. Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State signing the anti-grazing bill in 2017 was seen as the antidote to purge the state of the poison of violent clashes between herdsmen and farmers. The governor had the backing of the State House of Assembly, so everything appeared to be in the favor of bringing the crisis to an end. There was also the inauguration of 600 livestock guards to enforce the law. The arrest of herdsmen found flouting showed the enthusiasm. So why do all these actions taken by the governor appear not to have yielded the desired result? Because hundreds more were killed, homes burned, and farmlands destroyed by groups suspected to be herdsmen. 2018 has brought with it another turbulent bout for Governor Autumn, who had to grapple with more debts. Residents have fled for their lives to neighboring Nasarawa State, whose resources can only be stretched to a point. Protesters have hit the streets again, calling for a tougher stance from the #1 citizen before all control is lost.
I'm very surprised that the Inspector General of Nigeria is saying that this is a communal clash. Who are we communing with? Who are we communing with? Some bunch of Fulani terrorists came, killed us, burned down homes, and you say we are having communal clashes? Who are we fighting with? Nobody fought with them.
Is it too much for us to ask that when we go to sleep, we should sleep with our eyes closed?
No.
Is it too much for us to ask as a peaceful people that when we go about our businesses, when we go about our farming activities, we should do it without any fear?
No.
Is it too much for us to sit and hope for the best?
No.
Is it too much for us to sit like normal people would and think of a better future for our children?
No.
Please, the world should arise and help us stop this nonsense.
The governor is having another go at maintaining control with a call to arrest the leadership of the Miyetti Allah over insightful statements.
The leadership of Miyetti Allah, Cotton Hori, in particular the secretary and the president of this association, that came out, they are on tape, they were in the papers, and issued this threat and said they were going to do it. They cannot go scot-free. They must be arrested.
The defiance of the herdsmen to the law raises eyebrows to questions whispered in corridors. Questions of sponsors of the attackers, questions of action or inaction by the security agencies to contain the menace. While the country ponders on answers, the people living in fear of being wiped out. From above, it all looks peaceful. And for a moment, the thought of people sharing the resource called land in harmony is beautiful. Orelu Ashonibare, Channels Television News.
To legal matters now, Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has declined to grant an order of interim injunction stopping the National Assembly from probing the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice over the reinstatement of the former pension tax team chairman Abdul Rashid Maina into the Federal Civil Service. In an ex parte motion, the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, sought a restraining order against the National Assembly. But rather than grant the order, Justice Nyako ordered that the National Assembly be put on notice in respect to the application and fixed January the 15th for the National Assembly to show cause why the interim injunction should not be granted. Not satisfied by that ruling, the Minister of Justice filed another motion asking the court to determine if the National Assembly has the right to probe issues relating to employment, attendance at work, disengagement, reinstatement or promotion of a civil servant. In part 2 after the break, more on the repatriation of Nigerians from Libya, and we have in our Abuja studios aide to the President, Mrs. Abike Dabiri Erowa, to discuss this. Please stay with us.